Welcome to the WealthStack podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Rosic, the director of WealthStack Content and Solutions. In this episode, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Adam Holt, CEO and founder of AssetMap, a software as a process experience for financial professionals who provide advice in the wealth management, investment, tax, and insurance markets. And we'll dive into what all that means in a little bit. But Adam, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Shannon. Awesome to see you as always.
Well, it's been about 10 years now. I think we've probably known each other, and it's been about 10 years since you founded AssetMap, right?
It has actually been about 10 years. In fact, this coming March is our anniversary. Someone just reminded us this is our anniversary of being a legitimate company, not just a hobby project.
Love it. Well, hey, time flies when you're having fun in WealthTech, right?
That is true. We know that.
Well, I know you. I would love for you just to give our newer listeners to this podcast just a quick overview of who you are and why you created AssetMap and what the journey's really been like building a tech company.
Got it. Who I am. I'm crazy, neurotic, and I like being overworked. That's why I started a tech company. Now, I'm a recovering financial professional, been a CFP for 25 years now. In my practice in Philadelphia, I was in asset management, wealth management practice, estate planning, also did corporate benefits. That practice got to about 25 people, about $1.2 billion of AUM. And we did that on the backbone of this concept called AssetMap, where we were trying to take the complexity out of the conversation that we were having with our typically high net worth business owner clients that said, we're not reading your 80-page report. Thank you very much. And for this huge fee, I don't know what it says. So can you summarize it for us? So we were stuck doing executive summaries for everybody. And at the end of the day, that they said they wanted even simpler than that. So we wound up actually creating a framework, which has become AssetMap, which is a visualization of the entire household and all the financial decisions they're making at the highest level of data. What is it? Where is it? Who controls it? What's the tax wrapper? And of course, if we can do that spatially, people have a much better memory recall. And so they're like, oh, that box that's over at Vanguard, I need to move that. And all of a sudden we found out that we had much better conversations with the visual, Shannon. And that really went viral in 2012 when I showed it at my top producer conference, top broker dealer conference. And 20 people said, I want to use your platform. I'll just pay you whatever, because I'm doing this on a yellow pad. And so that's what happened. And now you look back years later, we've got almost 6,000 advisors around the world using AssetMap in multiple currencies and languages now, which is really just amazing to me. We have over 1.25 million people in AssetMap. So it's amazing to see how this simplicity kind of became something, but it wasn't all roses. Right. There's a lot of things we learned about being in fintech over the last 10 years.
I mean, it does sound like fun at the end of the day. And I did say, time flies when having fun in WealthTech. And speaking of fun, what's coming first, Adam. Stats all, folks. So I want to talk about the number 6 with you. Well, 6 million to be exact, because AssetMap recently secured 6 million in Series B funding. Congratulations, by the way, huge accomplishment. But what does this mean in terms of growth for the firm?
It was an interesting market in 2021 and 2022. We were getting a lot of inbound interest. If you know or followed what the private equity market or the venture marketplace was in end of 21, we were getting so many requests to exit and to roll up. And we entertained a couple of them here and there, but we have a really big mission, which is we will literally want to put an asset map on every fridge on the planet. And not every venture firm wants to do that. So we were very selective about who we wanted to partner with in this growth equity round. It actually turns out it was a Series A. We called it a Series B because we had done a strategic round, a very small one. So this was just next in the sequence. The truth is kind of phase of where the company is. We were basically profitable and this was all growth equity. So the opportunity to raise came up in that crazy marketplace of 2022. And when the markets, fell apart, we were in a really interesting predicament, which was, do we want to continue down this path or kind of go with our classic 40% a year growth rate, which was, fine for most of us. And I think we were really strong coming into this, but we actually did something really unique, Shannon. We actually did what we call a community raise. Our existing raise partners were all customers and partners and people who believe in what we're doing. So we went a different route than going our typical vent. And it's really exciting because now we have aligned partners that are really just share our vision of what we could do in the future. And it's really fun to be part of that.
Well, you talk about vision and putting asset maps on every fridge out there. Mm-hmm. But I want to throw another stat at you that I came across in Schwab's 2021 Modern Wealth Survey.
Mhm.
It said only 33% of Americans have a written financial plan. To me, that number seems very low, especially in an era where we're trying to simplify financial plans. And I think it was you that even said, the days of those 80-page reports are dead and we need to make them more engaging. So why the gap still?
Yeah, well, it's funny because that even throws me up. I think 33% is high. I'm really surprised to hear that American households have written plans at the level of 33%. That's got to be a high net worth environment, because you still have a high percentage of the entire population that can't even cover their emergency reserves. I'm sure they don't have a written financial plan. So let's be honest, the financial planning that has been delivered, especially in the United States, has been specifically for high net worth families. The rest of the population is still trying to figure out what is an IRA. I mean, literacy is so abysmal. It's very clear to me why financial planning hasn't been adopted, because we're talking about, luxuries when people haven't even addressed their necessities. One of the challenges I think that we've kind of touched on, even though like most financial solutions started in the high net worth space, right? Because they were willing to pay for it, had high expectations. That has really moved throughout the mass market, where I think we've all now have higher expectations of whether it's how my app is effective, or how fast I can get to the movie I want to watch, or if I want to order some food and I want it delivered. Our expectations of meeting our needs is so much higher. And why that is relevant is because when it comes to financial guidance and advice, we're starting to see the mass market ask for, hey, am I okay? Am I financially well? Are there questions I should be asking? Do I really even know what is the difference between these different investment choices, let alone insurances or legal protections? And I think you're starting to see people become more aware of the need to get financially fit. And that is replacing what we had been calling financial planning for years, right? The movement of financial wellness and literacy is going to overcome this concept that, it's financial planning, like retirement plan distribution, right? I just think that that's so myopic, and it's time for us to move on. And that's why I think you're seeing a huge change. I noticed in some of the interviews you've been doing recently, this idea towards advice engagement. And it's a cause that we've been really championing and trying to bring people into. We're not the only ones that are talking about it, but thankfully the like-minded CEOs that are in this space are saying it's true. Advice engagement is where the professional helps the client make better decisions in real time. That's really the key to where I think this market's going. And it's why financial planning really, it's almost irrelevant that it has only been adopted at 33%. It's not the future, frankly.
So what's the difference then, and maybe you can explain this, between client engagement and financial planning? Because they shouldn't be lumped together.
It's funny because they are part and parcel to a degree, right? If you did your CFP, your certified financial planner designation, you know that financial planning is legal, tax, insurance, investment decisions. Okay. It's the whole structure of your overall well-being with respect to financial decisions. Unfortunately, financial planning tools, which have dominated the space, 80 to 90% of them are purchased for retirement distribution planning, right? Accumulation and distribution planning. Very few of the other modules are ever even run. Life insurance, long-term care, business succession, estate planning. Only a small percentage of the population ever even gets this. And so the challenge, I think, is that financial planning has become synonymous with, as I already said, retirement accumulation and decumulation planning. Why? Well, because the marketplace, our financial professionals, make their money on asset management. And frankly, financial planning, as I know well, as that recovering planner, has been actually a sales enablement tool. Watch me, I'll do my financial plan for you and I'll justify how smart I am. So therefore it justifies why you need to work with me. Oh, you know what? I can manage your assets. And I say that lovingly because as I can joke, because I actually manage assets and I built a big business on it. But I think it's time to grow up. The reality of our health is that, right, I'm not fit just because I have big muscles, okay? And I think that's the thing. It's like I have an IRA and I have a distribution plan. I've got a financial plan. No, okay, come on. So advice engagement is really critical, Shannon, and here's why. All of us as financial professionals are going to experience a lot of pressure from technology direct to consumer, right? Whether you're going to talk about the chat GPT or whether you're going to talk about artificial intelligence or just Excel, Okay. The technology is accessible to everybody. And that means they could do their own financial plan. They can run their own numbers. They can go on an app they're given by their employer and tell them whether they're on track for retirement. Where advisors need to make a difference now is to provide guidance and context for real-time decisions that clients are stuck making, right? They're not exactly sure what choice they should make, or when there's a high cost of being wrong and I don't want to mess it up, I kind of want validation from another human. So we're going to see this movement towards the human advisor being more relevant for bigger decisions than just asset allocation, investment management. And so if you think about it, that's the moment of advice engagement where it's delivered, which means, what does that mean? Advisors need to find a way to move beyond just retirement distribution planning and talk about all the things in the financial decisions that have physical, tangible implication, as well as emotional and wellness and behavioral implications. And merging those two is going to be really awkward for a lot of people. We're calling that advice engagement because it needs a name.
No, I completely agree, because there really is this new standard of client expectations. And, I can imagine for advisors, they're probably a bit overwhelmed on what they need to focus on, at least this year and beyond, right? Especially when we're in a very volatile market still, but there's never been a greater need for financial advice. I like to call it the bull market for advice, if you will. But, what should advisors be focusing on throughout this year, knowing that this is the shift that's happening?
That's a great question. I think what we can all focus on is, can we deliver more value without being asked? Can we be proactive for our clients? Can we act in their best interests when they weren't thinking about us? And the reason I say this is because, I think about a lot of the technology that we all use today and we're all used to, and we have now high expectations around. Like, I love that my phone tells me when a meeting is coming up because I'm already busy. I'm doing something else. I appreciate that automated, oh yeah, that's right, I got to get ready. Or if something's coming up, or I got to make a call. Now I have set it up that way. It doesn't just do it on its own. Okay. But I think there's also an opportunity to know that I have someone in my corner. So if I'm a customer of advice or investment management or insurance, whatever marketplace you're in, what is my advisor doing for me without me asking? Unfortunately, our physicians don't call us out of the blue. I don't know about you. Does your doctor, do you have a doctor? They call you and be like, hey, you know what? I was thinking about you and what you said about 4 months ago when I last saw you. Have you done anything about that cholesterol? Have you taken this? By the way, you know what? I already sent you a list. It's in your inbox, and there's a couple of different techniques you might want to use. Stop eating the potato chips, blah, blah, blah.
I could use the accountability, not gonna lie.
I mean, why is that not happening? I think that we have an opportunity. So advisors thinking about this, how could you deliver just one aspect of guidance or insight? We recently rolled out something called signals because we found that advisors weren't running multiple scenarios of plans. For example, they were running retirement plans, but they weren't doing anything to figure out whether people had the right amount of life insurance. So we said, okay, let's build an algorithm. Okay, it's tech. I don't need a human to do that. A formula to say whether you have enough coverage. Red, yellow, green. Okay, don't even give me a number. I don't even need a score. Just make it super Fisher Price. And can you just tell your clients, by the way, you're kind of red here. We should probably look at this. Being proactive about that, I think, is really appreciated. It's just like if my shoes are not tied and I'm walking around, like, are you going to be the person who points it out? Or are you going to just, I don't want to talk to the guy. Like, he'll figure it out. He'll trip on his head. The point is that we need to be proactive and help people. That's how we establish the next level of, I think, customer experience. And we need to do it without being asked.
Oh, no, I completely agree. And when it comes to the future of financial wellness, especially because we are seeing this rise in nuanced and specialized planning, whether it's being more tax efficient, whether it's estate planning, whatever it may be. As I said, clients are asking for more. So, what are those core components that advisors should be talking about with their clients, and maybe what technology should they be using to help with that overall experience? Just because I imagine that, you mentioned that we're focused on that kind of accumulation, decumulation phase. We're seeing more of that cradle to grave planning, for lack of better terms. But, what are those kind of core components that advisor at even just a base level should be focused on?
There's a framework I came up with a bunch of years ago, which I call the 6 L's. And it came quite ironically, when I was going to speak at a broker-dealer conference and the CEO called me up and said, Adam, do me a favor, can you just not talk about Asset Map? And I said, why am I driving here? And on the way, I actually said, gosh, what if I don't make it there on time? And is someone going to cover me? And what am I going to do? And I started realizing that these were patterns in driving that were similar to the Asset Map. But of course, I wound up weaving it in. But the point is that I realized that there were these 6 events that happen in all of our lives. Hopefully you've planned for them. It's a mess if you don't. And it turns out, I actually figured out they all started with the letter L. So I'm going to just tell them to all advisors. So write this down if you actually have a pencil or a pen or a computer near you. And basically, these are the 6 events that commonly disrupt our households, but we don't normally plan for it. So I typically, Shannon, I started using this in my own practice to a great outcome. Effectively, I would say something like this to all my clients. There are these 6 events I figured out that happen. I want to figure out whether we are in a position to handle these events. So just tell me whether you think we have a good plan, we have no plan, or I need to address a plan. If you have to write a check and we have a liquidity event because the roof blows off or something like that, do you have enough capital to cover it? Do you have enough emergency reserves? Yes, no, or Adam, come back with a recommendation. Number 2, if we have a long-term disability event, you can't work, do we have a plan? Yes or no? If we lose a life, like yesterday, do we know what we're doing? Does everybody know where to run? Does we know where the money is? Do we know what to do? Do we have enough? If we don't have a plan, I want to know about it. It turns out if you ask the same question about the next 3, long-term care event, what if we have a long-term care event? Who's taking care? Like, what do we do? Does anybody know what to do? Does anybody have a list, a checklist? If no, I'm going to make a plan. Number 5, longevity. If we live too long, what are we going to do? And last, if you have a legal or liability attack, that means do you have your documents in order for, as you say, cradle to grave, your wills, your trusts, your guardianship provisions? Is that in order? Do I need to save us here? Are we going to be in a mess? Or if you have a litigious environment, someone's going to sue you because you have a high malpractice environment. Do I need to think about legal protection? So that's the last question, is really legal and liability. Those are the 6 events. And I think that it's really critical that advisors are asking this proactively. We figured out a way to automate that in tech, but I think it's very human to ask that question.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you heard it here first, folks, the 6 L's. So be sure to write that down. But we can't talk about advice engagement without touching on behavioral economics. They were kind of married together, and from the way I understand it in its simplest terms, it's really just combining the elements of economics and psychology to understand why and how people behave the way they do ultimately out in the real world, which is a hard thing to capture as we've learned. And it really differs from those kind of neoclassical economics, which assumes that most people make well-informed decisions. And as we know, we are human, and that is not the case. And dealing with money is a sensitive subject because the path isn't always linear. So in your opinion, how can engagement around behavior and change help lower traditional intimidation barriers? A lot of people are just afraid to talk to advisors because they feel like they can't access this industry.
There's no question, Shannon, that behavior of the customer or investor and behavior of the financial advisor is 99% of the outcome, right? Our choice to talk about things, to bring them up, to reveal things that are somewhat intimidating or maybe uncomfortable, to broach subjects as an advisor that's like death and taxes and things that clients don't want to talk about. And certainly, I think the entire process of the typical intimidation of, let me give you a bunch of technical jargon and show you how smart I am, but to the point where you don't know what the heck I'm talking about. And my report actually mimics that, okay? Because you don't know what page to look on, 85 or 73, which one? I think the challenge with our industry is that we are asked to provide a very technical service. We believe it's a technical service, as you said, connected to the idea of math, right? I want to grow, I don't want to lose. And it usually has to do with capital. But that's not really what matters so much anymore. And I'm not to say that you can ignore the fact that the math doesn't matter. It's really about the meaning. It's the why. Because if you don't address people's why, their behavior ain't going to change, okay? And you have to understand that. So advisors, I think, are really challenged today to create a less intimidating process that focuses less on the engineering value of being technically perfect. That means massive Excel. That's for the back office. That's to justify the conclusion you're going to make. But the front office experience has to be inclusive. It has to be educational. And one of the things that we've been focusing on at Asset Map is how do we reduce the intimidation barrier by literally getting everybody on the same page. And the best way that we've been able to do that and keep proving this again and again is that when you can take somebody's financial inventory in whatever state without judgment, without red and green, good or bad, and just say, these are the facts and these are the people that matter. Why are we doing what we're doing? What do we care about? And we just ask good questions. You know, it's interesting. I just interviewed somebody a couple of days ago, and they reminded me of the Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Successful People. And it said, seek to understand first, and then seek to be understood. And that really begs the question. We have to ask good questions. I think it's going to be incumbent upon advisors to ask better questions like what matters? Where are you going to be? What do you want to be doing? Who's in your life? Who's not in your life? And play it forward and then figure out the finances behind it.
Well, speaking of good questions, that's a perfect segue into segment 2 of this episode, Adam, of Ask Us Anything, where I've gone out to the social universe and asked them to submit questions they want answered by you. So let's see who's dropped into the DMs this week. You are a popular guy, I must say. I had to cap it because I had so many questions. So I picked out a few of my favorites, with the first one being, what kind of impact is advice engagement having across the wealth management industry?
I think it's funny. I'm glad to see it's happening as fast as it is. When we see new entrants in the category, and with Kitsis and Iskowitz finally, I think putting, we'll call it real estate around advice engagement. It's moved from being the junk drawer of tech to maybe even the center island, the drawer you go in all the time. And we kind of knew that. I like to think we saw that in advance and are excited to see companies like Bento and FP Alpha. And I actually think WealthStack is in there as well. And some of the newer entrants and Lumient. I think that's really cool. Visit Wealth, and gosh, there's a whole bunch of friends, FP Pathfinder, I think, that are in that space now. We all almost were like orphans for years. Like, what is this specialty planning? I mean, I think even wealth management didn't really know what kind of category to put us in. But I'm glad to see that we're carving it out. And we all think that it's going to be the most important category on the map, because it's the part that's going to justify the human interaction. It's all front office, and it's delivering advice in an engaging way that's going to get people involved in making better decisions. That goes all the way back to your behavioral finance question, which is people, when they're empowered, will make better decisions that serve them.
Well, speaking of client experience, we actually had a question around that as well. And a mutual friend of ours said, I appreciate Adam's views on remote work and think his vision for how and where advisors work and how that impacts the client experience they need to think about creating. He said that would be a fun topic to hear a little bit more about. So give the 30,000-foot view on that.
Well, remote work, as we always tend to talk about it, or some people call it virtual. I've always argued that it's real work. It's not virtual work. It's very real. And my own firm actually went 10 years ago to a 95% virtual practice for our highest net worth clients, because nobody had time to come in and meet, after work. And we're not going to people's houses anymore. So virtual made a whole bunch of sense. And of course, when the pandemic happened, everybody was forced to do it if you didn't already. But we're not going back. And we knew that 10 years ago. And I think the key to it is it's that the production value of the customer experience, unfortunately, for many people, is still really lagging. I still see advisors that are, with the Zoom up their nose and the fan going in the background, and
or you're on mute.
Yeah, right. You're on mute. I even had a cup made that said you're on mute, so I got to hold it up in front of people's faces. But the important part of that is we need to be more mindful of the production value. Pretty much everything, Shannon, has high production value. I mean, we're literally competing with reality television programs right now. And so I think unless you want your audience to get distracted, you really need to really create an awesome production, because it's the equivalent of your mahogany covered room that used to spend so much time and money in creating this fantastic experience. And now you're relegated to a 4x6 screen that could be an iPad or an iPhone or not video, and I think we need to be more mindful of how we're perceived. And if we speak confidently, and are we showing visuals that people can read, not just illegible? I see it's a mess watching some people present sometimes. And I think we really need to stand out. There's an easy way to do it. And that's to get training and to be mindful of how you're received.
All right. Well, last question, and
Mm,
this is a burning one. It seems like on
burning.
people's minds. So will there be another awesome Advice Tech Live conference this year? We might have breaking news here,
Oh,
folks. Hang on.
yeah. All right. So the answer is yes.
Woohoo.
And it will be, thank you. And it will be in the beginning of November. At this point, we're looking at the November 2nd, 3rd. We're going to probably split it now over 2 days because we had a lot of feedback that people couldn't make most of it. So we're going to split it up. We're almost already full, even though we haven't announced it. Advice Tech Live is also going to have a very special beneficiary this year. As you know, we also, there's a charitable component of it. So we're really excited to announce that. I think everybody will be excited to get behind too. I can't say until it's legit, but that's going to be exciting. And the theme this year is going to be really around empowering our consumers, again, through advice engagement. I think we're seeing everybody's on the bandwagon now, and they realize they need to find a way to elevate the human experience. So let's all do that together. It'll be a fun couple of days together, showcasing the newest tech that's being built to support advisors.
I'll love to hear that. And I know you mentioned November 2nd. That's my birthday. So I might be
Hey,
spending my
perfect.
birthday with you guys then.
Love it. Cool. It's a Thursday, I think. So otherwise
Hey,
you get work.
yeah, exactly. So, well, great to hear. So there you have it, folks. Advice Live is happening this year. Well, Adam, I appreciate you being put on the spot and being put in the hot seat and your insightful answers. But
Thank you.
we've come to our final and probably my favorite segment, Stack It or Whack It. So I'm going to throw out a few technologies. They're not always WealthTech related. And you tell me if they're worth the hype or not. So the first one I want to throw out is the traditional risk tolerance questionnaire. Does it open the avenue for portfolio misalignment, or do they just need to be reconsidered at this point? Stack it or whack it?
Whack it. Wait, are these one-word answers? I mean,
oh no, you can totally elaborate. Most people do give their reasoning.
the reason that why risk tolerance questionnaires exist is because a compliance department decided that this is validation for supporting why we won't get sued. Okay. Unfortunately, we all just scaled that process to address the problem of aligning allocation with a perception that is defensible in a court or in an event. And unfortunately, that's not, you don't drive with regulation. Okay. We need to understand what people's behaviors are. We've seen lots of innovation from Riskalyze and a whole bunch of other companies. I think even Tolerisk is pushing that limit too, in terms of going to capacity. I think there's so much more that can be done here. But frankly, helping us as advisors figure out, where people are going to fail and bail and what they're really, what's going to serve them, I think is a really challenging thing. And there's much more human in this than there is formula. So whack it.
I haven't gotten enough whack it, so thank you for that.
You sure?
Number two, robo-advisors. I know it's a broad topic, but I remember when the headlines first came out and they're going to take over. We were going to be, it's iRobot world.
Yeah.
Obviously hasn't happened yet. It's been a bit underwhelming, I would argue. But,
Okay.
what does the future look like? Stack, whack, or even hybrid?
I don't, I talk about this too much now, which is Robo 4.0. That's what I call it. 4.0. I think we're right now in 3.0. And you were right. Robo 1.0, when we first started talking, everybody was scared for like a minute. Robo 4.0 with Chat GPT enabled and having codified the entire CFP journal, I think is some serious threat. But that being said, it's happening. So you got to, it's going to happen whether you like it or not. So you got to embrace it. And frankly, it creates efficiency. So I'm in a, wait, what are my choices? Whack it or what? Stack it. Yeah. Stack that. Stack that, John, get that on your tech stack. Somehow you got to figure out how to create more automation. The whole point is to delegate the stuff that's not worth your hourly rate and do the stuff that is deserving of it. And that means spending more time with people and getting connected to them, finding out what they really care about and being their advocate. Use the robo, use the tech to support that.
So we have one whack, one stack. I'm going to go out on a limb here for a tiebreaker.
Oh boy.
So I'm hoping that you are a sports fan. I know you're a Philly guy. So are you a hockey fan?
I can be, but this could get really ugly fast.
Well, I'm curious, obviously you see what Amazon is doing with the next gen stats for all the sports now. It's pretty incredible. And so I know in hockey, they actually strap sensors to the puck and the players' jerseys now to extract those stats and data so the coaches can make better decisions during the game. When it comes to sports tech like that, stack or whack, is it data overload, or is it now just the way things are in the future? Because the more data, the better performance.
I'll put it this way. If you could put those same indicators on an advisor in their practice and you could understand what works and what doesn't work, wouldn't you want to know?
Yes, fair.
Okay. So stack that. Stack that on your robo-advisor.
Stack it on the robo-advisor.
Right. Well, stepping on top of your, having a fist fight with your with risk tolerance.
There you go. All right. Well, that was the tiebreaker. So Adam, thank you as always. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you more, learning about Asset Map. So please tell listeners where they can find more about Asset Map, what you're up to, and where you'll be on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Shannon, for that, and appreciate it. Look, if you want to Google Asset Map, you're going to find us. Asset Map we're trying to make it a name brand and household recognized. And we've got some really exciting stuff coming. But if you want to interact with me, LinkedIn is always the best. So if you just direct message me or connect or do something like that, that's the best way to reach out to us. And of course, if you want to participate in a conversation, get involved in our Rethink podcast. It's been really fun to do that as well.
Sounds good. And if you are looking to stay ahead of the technology status quo, don't miss our WealthStack event, part of Wealth Management Edge, May 21st through 24th in Hollywood, Florida. And be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. So thank you all for listening in today.